Hi folks, welcome to Milam's Custom Reloading. I hope y'all have enjoyed your few months. I've been busy, been some caribou hunting, been working, and a lot of other things. I had a special request from a friend who thought it would be a good idea because apparently him and some others don't know how. And tonight we're going to discuss on how to mount a scope. Now this one, for example, is a Remington 788 6mm Remington. So when you get to selecting your base rings, there's several of them going to be the same. You just have to look up and define which ones you want. And this one, for instance, the only ones that I know that they make are Weaver base mounts. And as you can see, there's requires two screws up front, one screw in the back. So I have selected the Weaver. I've just started them on here. I haven't torqued them down. Most of them have directions on how much to put down on your scope rings. If they do not, in this case, the Weaver does not have any directions. Generally, you want to put 20 to 25 inch-pounds on your screws. Now, if you're a good guesser, that's good. If not, I use a Wheeler torque wrench. And you just simply turn it up to 25 inch-pounds. Now, if none of y'all have ever actually used a torque wrench, when you're done using it, you need to take it to 0. That way it'll reset. And I've set this for 25, and you do 3 clicks once it gets tight. What you want to do is on this one, where the 2 screws are, is just snug them up first before you actually torque them down. In which case, both of them are snug. So 1 click, 2 and 3. 1, 2, 3. This one's obviously got 1 screw, so you don't have to. 1, 2, 3. There is the base mounts torqued and set. Now, what you should always do, particularly with bolt guns, is make sure that you haven't over torqued it and your bolt still works, which that one's just fine. If it will not open, you have over torqued it and you need to loosen it up a little bit and restart. Now for the scope rings, I've got these Vortex scope rings. Nothing fancy about them. And by the way, I got all of this through Midway USA. Alright, so I got it out of the package. I've got it undone. I'm ready to put it on there. It's pretty simple. You put the screw right in the slot. And you just get her good and snug. And once again, these are the same way. They come with directions. In which case, this one says the base needs to be 25 to 30 inch-pounds. And then the actual rings themselves need to be 15 inch-pounds. So here's my torque wrench. As you can see, I've done put it back to 0. We're going to dial her up to, we'll do right at 30. the base is now set. So I've decided I'm going to try a different scope. I have used Leupold, Tasco, and Vortex, and I've decided I'm going to try this Whiskey 3 series. And folks, if you've never used one of these or looked at one, so far I'm going to highly recommend them. These are super clear scopes, and they're not much higher than Vortex. I think I picked it up for $230. So you just simply set it up there, make sure it's got a little bit of space, take your ring, and most of your scope rings will come with a Allen head to torque down the screws with, and I just use it to snug it up. So I get one started. And get the other one started. That one I actually got it touching, so I backed it off just a little bit. This takes a little bit of trial and error, or at least it does for me, because generally I'll get one side touching and the other side not touching, and then I have to kind of start all over. And that's about good and about as firm as you want, maybe just a little more loose so you don't scuff up the scope. Then you start your back. You can start the back or you can start the front. I've done both. It doesn't matter. I got it just a touch too tight. I'm gonna back it off just a hair. And that'll work. Now what you want to do now is raise it up there and turn off my flashlight. It's a little dark in here. I won't be able to see what I'm doing. But you want to raise it up there and try to keep in mind where you might want the scope at. And always try to remember, if when the recoil comes back, you obviously don't want to have it in your eyeball. Now I will say this about this Whiskey 3 scope. It has a lot of eye relief on it. So if your scope is not completely clear, you will have a lot of adjustment. And I think that right there is about where I want it. So snug it up. Go just a little bit further. You don't want to torque it down yet. That's about where I want it. I can still turn it, but it ain't going to move on its own. Now, I highly recommend if you have more than one gun or plan on getting more than one gun. Bushnell makes this. This is called a bore sighter. And it's very adjustable. They come with come with 4 of these you put down in the barrel. That one's 35 to 45. This one's 22 to 27, so that's the one we're going to be using. Now, you AR guys out there, I will tell you this much. The bore sighter will not work on your AR. Your scope sits up too high. But for those of y'all who do not have an AR and wanting to do this in a bolt action, or regular bolt action, or a regular semi-automatic rifle, this should work on most of your rifles. Ruger Precision people, this does not. Also, I know that for a fact. But this inside of it, and I'll put the camera up here shortly, but I doubt it'll show it. But there's a grid in here, and it's supposed to help you get in line at 100 yards. Very rarely will it be on target at 100 yards, but it will get you on paper. I've never seen it where it does not. And usually it's within, I'm going to say, 4 inches of the bullseye. This will save you a lot of headache having to put it out there at 50 yards, getting it somewhat zeroed in, and then trying at 100. I've never seen this where it will not work. It'll get you generally within 4 inches of the bullseye. So you just slide her up in your barrel. Turn there. This knob here. It'll get it snug in the barrel. And you raise it up here, being that it's night, you just put it up there to the light, and you make minor adjustments, which I think, strangely, I've got the scope right, but it appears that the bore sighter was not. And it was not. And my scope is just a little bit off kiltered. Alright, and I'll put the camera up. Maybe y'all can see it, maybe not, but there's a grid in there. And it doesn't appear like it's going to work. But there's a grid in there, and there's little check marks. And as of right now, the scope is showing to be low and to the right about 3 inches both ways. So you unscrew, and most of them will tell you up. You just turn this and it'll raise your crosshairs up. This one shows to be to the right, so you'll mark it to the right. Now each click is a 1/4 MOA, which means 1/4 of an inch. So at 100 yards, one click will theoretically move it 1/4 of an inch. So, turn off my light here. I'm going to bring it up. Then turn it to the left. And I got a little off kiltered, so it needs to come up just a hair more. And now it's perfectly in line. Now, some of these scopes have a deal where you can set it to 0, It requires you to unscrew things and make them loose. The Vortex does it. I've never messed with the Vortex at 0. SIG has something really simple, in which case you can see it is at 3 3/4 MOA on the top, and it is at 8 1/4 on your windage. The SIG makes this real simple, and I'll show y'all. You just simply pick it up and turn it. I got it on 2, so I had to turn a little more. And when you get to 0, let it back down. Now, obviously, when I go to sight this in tomorrow, it's going to be off kiltered, and I will redo it again. But I just wanted to show y'all how simple this was. So, if those of y'all who don't have the high quality stuff, can't afford it, but want to try something long range, you put them on 0, and if you need to turn up 1 MOA, you just simply turn it to 1. Or if you need to go 2, you turn it to 2. And then whenever you bring it back down, you just bring it back down to 0. I forgot one important thing to tell you. You need to torque this scope down. So, I haven't reset it. So I got to bring it back down here to 0. And then I'm going to bring it back up to 15 inch-pounds. For some reason, every one of these are different. Vortex, obviously, here's 15 inch-pounds. I want to say Leupold is 20 pounds. And then Tasco, I think, is right around 15 also. So, kind of watch out. Now, like I said before, this takes a little bit of trial and error. But if you'll see, I have a gap on this scope ring and very little gap on that scope ring. And it's backwards on this one too. And this is a common problem for me. I'm hoping the rest of y'all might have this same problem too. Just keep an eye on it, because if you torque it down, it's going to look terrible, and it may cause some sighting issues. So I'm going to back this off just a little bit. And do the same for this one. And looks like the gaps are pretty close there. So I still got the bore sighter on this thing, so I'm going to make sure it's throwing it off kilter just a little bit. I'm going to leave it like it is, because it's not that much. It looked like it threw it off maybe 1 click each, 1 click to the right and 1 click up. So I'm just going to slowly ease each screw until they get snug. And that one's on, that one should have clicked on that one, but I stopped. So both of them should be ready, and that one already did it. That one did it. So I'll take one more look at the gaps on the scope rings. The gaps look pretty even. And there it is sight, and there it is torqued up. For those of y'all who may buy an older gun, this one had a front sight on it. As big of a front sight as that it was on it, I figured it was going to get in the way of the scope, so I took it off. And just to give y'all some ideas, this may happen. Also, those of y'all who might be using for your AR guys, those of you who may actually use the red dots, I have never personally sighted in a red dot. I looked at a couple the other day. Some of them do half MOA. So if you was to sight it in at 100 yards, one click would make it a half an inch. And if I understood correctly, if you were sighting it in at 50 yards, it's just going to be a quarter of an inch. But from what I've seen and what I've looked at them, they operate pretty much the same way. Now I know there's plenty of people that use bubbles, levels. Some people have benches. As you can see, I'm sitting here in my chair in the living room and did this. I have had very little issues out of doing it this way. I've had a couple of guns where I wasn't paying attention, like I've said, and had the scope rings off kiltered, and I've had to readjust them while sighting them in. If you want to use a bubble, great, it helps you. I can tell you it does. A bench also helps you. But if you don't have those things and have no way of getting those things, you can sit right here in your love chair in your house and do this just as well. All you need is this bore sighter and a good light to shine it up in. Those of y'all who might be thinking about using the laser sights where the cartridge is a laser, I've never used them, but I've known 4 or 5 people. They're good people to trust. They work better than the bore sighter. But $25 versus $25, and this one will work on any gun from 45 caliber down to 22, where you had to buy each individual cartridge. This one for me is a better choice. Now, if all of y'all are going to just buy just one cartridge and use that one cartridge, then the laser bore sighter might be a better choice. Or you can do it at 50 yards and sight it in, get it closely sighted in, and then sight it on in at 100 yards or 200 yards, whichever you may choose. But this is how I do it. Tomorrow when we get out there, you'll see how well it works, and you'll see my grouping results and all that other. Any of y'all have any questions, comments, want me to try something different, show y'all something, do some comparisons on different guns maybe, hit me up in the comments, and I will see y'all later.